Hello, I just want to share some links, especially to these Hermetic alchemical texts and great website, Inner Garden. But the first one is The Crowning of Nature. This is an anonymous book, the book with seven seals, and so these alchemical processes. Now there are multiple aspects to them. I like to stay on the measurable, the tangible, but you can go in the other ways. That's just not my bag, baby. So preparation. Mercury. Mercury, the element, and especially in alchemy, is like amalgam. It's one of these really special elements that wants to make connections. It wants to interact with other elements. So gold and silver amalgams, that type. If you just search mercury amalgam chemistry videos on YouTube, there's some really fascinating stuff out there. Distillation, division, coitus. Now the alchemical wedding of sun and moon, or silver and gold is a important. Now Columba, the dove, and conception, but also the 7 points around there: sun, earth, moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the gods, the elements, and all these other aspects: impregnation, fermentation, separation. The crocodile now, separation. Now, because for instance, mercury, we just think of it as a single element, but at least back then there was different forms of them. So even when they use the fire symbol, it will have, there's slow fire and there's hot fire, and that's an important one to remember. Conjunction, separation. Again, different form of separation, different form of conjunction, separation. Columba the dove being this key symbol in legend and so many other aspects. Again, separation, which again a different form. With his focus, the Columba the dove, the symbol of peace. The olive branch, for instance, famously in the story of Noah and the olive branch, and that's why the 13 leaves on the UN flag, etc. Multiplication. Imbibe, and again now we start to see the Uribus, so congeal, calcination, and the Uribus. So this is one particular version, but there's also on the same page, there's another link to Elementa Chemica, also known as The Crowning of Nature by Johannes Conrad Barchusen. And we'll see the various forms, the same sort of illustration. So even if you're not into it, yeah, it's still some beautiful artwork. And again, it is part of our heritage, the sun and the moon and this alchemical wedding, as we saw. That was, you see. So he's did these same drawings of the previous work, but they're just a little bit more black and white and stylized. Now, alchemical symbols in themselves, and even alchemical apparatus. So the basis of this is alchemy. Now, sulfur and mercury. Now, I'm going to do that in one of the next videos. But again, we're seeing Columba the dove, the 7 elements, gods, planets, etc., and the different divisions, and leading to calcination. And again, the dove, Columba, so that previous work is the same thing now. The pelican, for instance, and the importance of that as a esoteric symbol, but also as a rubeid of blood. But now we start to see the Uribus, for instance, here in these illustrations. So if we go back to the previous one, this is it's got the titles on there, and it's a little bit nicer artwork. But this is what's happening also in this other one. It's a previous form of textbook, and again, and also lovely artwork as well, music and these other aspects as well. The quadrivium, it's another really fascinating one, but also again beautiful artwork is Splendor Solis by Salomon Trismosin, and again just at least a beautiful artwork, but a camphor scrolling to begin with, the sun and the moon, and these. The peacock, for instance, even I think that's an interesting one. But for alchemical wedding, sun and moon, silver and gold, connecting to rebus, of course. Now even mining, because there's George Agricole, 15th century mining textbook, and had to do with processing of metals. Fascinating stuff. Now even, well, we have the canvas on one side there. What would be interesting? That one, okay, but all the scepter and orb, symbols of hermeticism, weights and measures, the basis of law and society and science, still in it. Just it's not a sexy enough subject, but again, the alchemical wedding, the sun and the moon, silver and gold, and silver and gold. What do they react best with? What silver and gold amalgams? Mercury. It's based on the alchemical teachings are based on by observing the actual workings of nature. These are the laws, if you want to use the word divine laws, that define the cosmos, and by observing these, they then applied them to other aspects. But again, a bit of Columba again. Mercury, so we have the caduceus, the wand, the measuring rod, feeding the dragon as well. Now we'll come back to this because this will be in the next work, but also you'll notice that these drawings around the side are showing industry and the application of alchemy in the very real sense. The peacocks once more, and now the three birds there, albedo, negredo and rubedo. And again, you'll notice, weights and measures, science and industry, happening in the background here, even like a pump going on there as well. And especially through classical Greco-Roman gods, that's how they've seemed to have done these things. Okay, so we have now warfare in the background. Now the white, the red and the black, albedo, rubedo and negredo, which is, I'll come to that in some couple future episodes. The peacock, parvo, the constellation, as well as this very important bird in these alchemical texts. So the birds of alchemy define operations. So again, we see the caduceus, the measuring rod, and with the scepter and orb, the weight and the ruler. The ruler defines weights and the ruler defines measure. And again, now we see, basically a marketplace going on there in the background, astronomy, music, quadrivium. The moon, Artemis or Diana, and again, so these are, he's standing on the crescent moon. Now again, the scepter and orb, these important royal symbols as well. Now the net is something we'll come to as well, which they've sort of cleverly hidden, but we're seeing, again, the water wheel and these, now they're doing, we could call them more pleasurable pursuits, but how again these apply. So for instance, Nuar and Fuzi, which is almost essentially the exact equivalent of Hermes or Thoth, was also the god in Chinese legends that taught the people fishing and hunting. And what's going on here? We've already saw some hunting pictures. And just again on their own beautiful artworks, reminiscent of the Tower of Babel, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it a cert. But yeah, now the blackbird as well, as in Corvus, the constellation, Corvus, the servant bird of Apollo. And now, so even washing, to make lye and to wash the clothes, the washers needed alchemy, and we see at least hinting to it there on this particular picture. Okay, all these links will be in the description. Great website, in a garden. Now, Clavis Artis. Now, this is a really cool one because, okay, corpus, anima, spiritus, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Now, this is the late 1600s, or late 1500s, early 1700s. This was published, but it's attributed to the year 12 of our Lord, Anno Christi, 1236. They say that's where the translation come from, but it's also said to be from the works of Zoroaster, as in Zoroastrian, this ancient Persian god. And the rabbi and the Jew, So they're calling him Zoroaster the rabbi and Yuden as well. So that's what. Now this again, the orb. Now this is the sphere with these lines is another alchemical symbol, but we're seeing essentially the rod of Asclepius. And again, these alchemical elemental symbols that we still, and also of course describe the planets, green, yellow, and red. And again, within this Venus symbol, actual alchemical apparatus there. So if you just look at a few pictures, you'd think it's a mythical stuff. No, but that's how they wrote things at that time. It was a much more symbolic era. People were not as literate, and also it was a time when it was a bit dangerous to do this stuff, and so you had to hide it in there. And also this concept of that, are we sort of just, the internet, you look at it, people have access to all the libraries of the world, and what do they use it for? Well, also another common theme, whether it's Mason tracing boards, these other tracing boards, is the river, which is frequently used. The sun, gold, Apollo, the moon, silver, Mercury, and the alchemical wedding joined by Mercury. And we have Venus there as well, the Venus symbol, and back to the orb, and this three-headed one will be coming to that. Mining and the underworld, and so the god of miners is usually the god of the underworld. We see the phoenix from the flames, mercurial symbol, feeding the dragon, and we saw that in Splendor Solis as well. So you see that these same themes. Where was feeding? There we go, feeding the dragon. And we go to Clavis Artis, feeding the dragon. Okay, so we've got a few minutes. Columba, the hope, and again sun and moon, and it's got to do with that. But again, the homunculus will come to this as well. And sacrifice, which is, and the blood. And again, these are not to be translated in the literal sense. Now, not to say that some people probably looked at it and said, "Oh, this is how you do your spellcraft," but it's actually symbolic. Now, we're seeing the river, which is this constant theme. And just to leave any doubt, if this is an alchemical text, we're actually seeing alchemical apparatus, laboratories, being described here. They're describing the processes. So this would be a diagram, an illustration that we would be more familiar with, that this is passing on information, as where something like this was more of the older sense. Now, vines, now even Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus symbols, which again connect to actual elements as well. And also the comet flying through. But now distillation, now they're using a wooden barrel. Now I would suppose that this has to do with slow heating rather than active heating. But distillation and also fruit. So grappa and these you can make through fermentation, and grapes you can make wine, but through potatoes or the leftover of the wine pressings, all sorts of other, any fruit, sugar, you can make distillation and make a spirit, an alcohol. And well, this is another theme, sort of, so you see either a dog or a lion eating the snake, but again, this colour stream. Now this is a very interesting, and this is what I'll be focusing on in the next episode, this three-headed dragon, Mercury, sulfur, and salt. So the dragon, or the lion eating the snake. I'm sure it was in Splendor Solis where we saw that, but again, it's in pretty much all of them. But just looking for the lion eating the snake. I'm pretty sure it was in Splendor Solis. Or even in the earlier ones that I showed. Okay, no, it's back in those the Crowning of Nature books. Now even now we have writing and script, but also we'll see sulfur symbols. And now that's is that Libra, but that's also got to do with okay, just I would rather not say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but alchemical processes. The sun, and the moon, and even the triple head under the crown. There's a nice reference to the triple crown there. All these links will be in the description. At least it's lovely artwork, but it is part of our heritage as well. And with that, have a good one.